Thank you for joining us here on Joy News. Today, I am Komla Adom. Now, explain the fuel theft to Ghanaians. This is a call from Star Ghana to Martin Amidu and the Office of a Special Prosecutor, following reports that two of his employees were investigated for taking advantage of their office to steal fuel. Speaking to Kojo Yangsing on the AM show, head of programs at Star Ghana Foundation, Mrs. Teku Saba, said the special prosecutor should explain to the people of Ghana what led to the alleged stealing of what has been done about it since the incident. She said Mr. Amidu must make the case or risk his office being taken seriously.
We are 5 months into the year, so we should hear something about it. We encourage the special prosecutor himself and other members of the civil service to take action as soon as possible to ensure that Ghanaians continue to have the trust for the integrity of the office itself to be able to do its prosecutions. Otherwise, the risk we will face is that nobody will take the office seriously anymore. We already know the circumstances within which the office was and some of the challenges it has had. First, the special prosecutor did not have an office. Civil society and the media fought for him to get an office. Then he did not have staff. Now we realize that people were seconded to him, and then he did not have a budget to undertake his activities. So all these things are impediments that civil society and the media are continuing to fight for the special prosecutor's office to be able to do its work. And then we hear of this news, you know. But I think we also have to give an opportunity to the special prosecutor to make his case, you know, for us to hear him, because these are his staff. His secretariat, the head of his secretariat and his account. These are very key members of his staff. What has he said about it? What has he done about it? Understanding that civil servants themselves have their own disciplinary processes. And as per the Constitution, you can't just sack a civil servant. There has to go through a process. Has that process started? Who is in charge of that process? Who is leading on the process? Why is the civil service silent about the story? All these are questions that we need to ask and get answers to.
Well, member of the Africa Union Advisory Board on Corruption, Daniel Batidam, supported the call, adding the conduct of the employees in question is an important issue and not the amount of a fuel which was allegedly stolen.
Involved are not important. It's the conduct. What is important is the conduct of officials who are supposed to belong to an anti-corruption institution and of whom we expect the highest levels of integrity, transparency, and accountability, and all the other things you can talk about. So I don't think you should go the direction of how much is involved at all. It is not important how much it is involved. The conduct of the officials or any official working in the office of the special prosecutor and any other anti-corruption agency for that matter is one that must be above reproach. And I am afraid, thanks to your good work, that this is not good news from the office of the special prosecutor, and it is more so at the time that Ghanaians are asking what is going on at the office. The special office that was set up to perform the magic that all the other anti-corruption agencies like SRAJ, ILUCO, and others have not been able to perform over the years. I mean, this is bad news at a bad time. It is perhaps the time for a number of persons to speak, including perhaps the special prosecutor himself and the public service in general. But I think this is really bad news.
Mr. Batidam also condemned the Office of a Special Prosecutor's current recruitment policy of taking staff on secondment from other state institutions. According to him, special individuals are needed to work at the Office of a Special Prosecutor.
Nothing is going to work. Nothing is going to work if we are going to populate the Office of Special Prosecutor with the same public servants or civil servants on secondment from the police service, from UCO, or any other institution. In any case, what difference does it make to second people from institutions reason to come and support somebody in an office that is supposed to be special. In fact, we need special people to work in the office of the special prosecutor. We don't need ordinary people. In fact, I have been asking myself whether we are going to employ Ghanaians like you and I, born and bred here, or we are going to employ other people from a different planet. But there are many things that must go into the kind of persons that get into the office of the special prosecutor, as it is a requirement for any other anti-corruption institution. Otherwise, this will be an exercise in futility. And we are already 1 year into this office. There is a lot of public resources being wasted and public time. The special prosecutor himself appears to be helpless.
Suggesting the way forward, head of programs at Star Ghana, Mrs. Teku Saba, called for the establishment of a long-awaited code of conduct for public officers to help change the culture among public and civil servants.
I think the first thing that we need to address is the culture within the public service. We have very good public service officers, and I've worked across the country with them. But you know that there's a code of conduct for public officers. And it started as just an administrative document and became a bill. And it's been in Parliament since the last Parliament. It hasn't been passed. So what holds a public officer to strict code of conduct, which includes things like conflict of interest? Why should we do this or not do this? And what are the sanctions for doing that? In our work, we find that there are 3 types of corruption. There's the grand corruption, the one that politics come in. There's the petty corruption, which is what happens on the street. And then there's the quiet corruption. So there's corruption that happens because there's laxity in the system. So this issue around the fuel is because, you know, there's a loophole that people have taken advantage of and seem to have taken advantage of for a long time. So what are the sanctions that stop public officials from doing some of these things that they see as normal? I have a different view about looking for special people, because then we'll finally get angels to come and sit in that office. But I think Ghanaians have to model for ourselves the types of character that we want. And so we can get public servants who can come into that office and do the work and do it well.
We can do some other stories now. And for some time now, there's been a lot of talk about kidnapping cases and robberies across the country. And when there are suggestions that those behind these crimes are foreigners, one nationality readily comes to mind, that's Nigerian. But what do these people think about the growing perception about them and the alertness of the police of their activities? In the following report, Joy News' intern, Jean-Claudel Sinzohan, has been speaking to some Nigerians about these.
I have been living in Ghana for the past 1 year and a half. Within that period, I have encountered many uncomfortable body searches by the police. Although I did nothing wrong, I felt guilty. Anytime I have to step out, I become very anxious. And I'm not the only one. In my country, Benin, when an officer stops you, he or she will ask for your ID. That is the first step, and that's the case in many other countries. But here in Ghana, the card is meaningless. Some officers would even do body and phone searches. As a foreigner, it is shocking and embarrassing.
I was quite depressed, overwhelmed, anxious, overpowered because of the method they use.
And working on towards this road to buy food for myself for dinner. On that day, they searched me around there. I thought it was something more serious, but they asked to search through my wallet, and I had a couple of money my parents sent for me to feed for school. And seeing that money, they took me for a fraudulent person, and they were trying to sort of create a scene.
Ask for your ID when you're being searched or anything. They just come around, they just park. And when you park, the first thing that comes to your mind is, what have I done? You get scared, first reaction and everything. Okay.
With kidnappings in Takoradi, Kumasi and Accra blamed on foreigners, the hatred for them is soaring. But not every foreigner is a criminal. In fact, there are genuine people like myself with genuine reasons for residing in Ghana. So, among foreigners in Ghana, we often ask ourselves, what does the law say about the treatment of people from other countries? Sometimes appearances can be deceptive, but as a foreigner, if you have a trending hairstyle or dreadlocks and more than one phone, you are inviting officers for an unpleasant search.
Two news about diplomats being kidnapped in Ghana. I think they are targets or so, I don't know. I guess, yes, I'm aware of the kidnaps. It's on the high rise. I think the Ghana police should concentrate on that instead of disturbing people working at night.
Thank you. Yeah, it's true, you know, as a musician on the street for a long time, we used to jam the police, you know, and after some searches, they can take you to their places, and then after one or two things, they free, you know. I had one experience at the Oxford Street where the patrol team searched me and took me to the headquarters, and in the long run, I played music and I got freed up, you know.
I understand people have complained about the fact that some officers are so hard and do not even ask permission before they conduct their searches. It's happened to me more than once. I may live in Ghana for a few more years, but as a citizen of a West African country, I do not want to live with the burden of feeling alien.
Allows police to search without and with a warrant under Criminal Offences Act and procedures. This is a measure that is put in place to ensure that they ensure security and make sure that people, bad people, do not get away with crimes that they've committed, or to ensure safety of even the people that they search. So it's legal, it's allowed, but there are procedures that they are supposed to go through to ensure that they do not dehumanize the person they are searching. So what we will look at is whether or not the individual or the police conducting the search did it as is expected by law, and whether or not the person who was searched felt that it was done rightly as is expected.
So you heard the report filed by Joy News in 10, Jean-Claudel Sinzohan. Now, President Akufo-Addo is optimistic the implementation of a right to information law will ensure transparency in government and help with the fight against corruption. The President, a few minutes ago, assented to the bill passed by Parliament in March. Here are some facts about the RTI bill. And we know that more than 100 countries around the world have implemented some form of freedom of information legislation. Sweden's Freedom of the Press Act of 1766 is the oldest, and Ghana has since 1999 made efforts to have its parliament pass the information law, and the bill requires setting up of an institution to manage public information. Now, a manual is also to be published spelling out the types of information that may be accessed at various public institutions. Information is exempt from disclosure if it is prepared for submission or has been submitted to the office of the President. And other types of information exempted from the disclosure includes information that could prejudice national security, information affecting international relations, among others. Now, a decision by an information officer denying an applicant could be challenged with the head of a public institution and subsequently at the High Court. Let's now hear from President Akufo-Addo when he assented to the bill a short while ago.
Sense of responsibility and commitment to good governance in passing this significant piece of legislation. The purposes of the Act, as set out in its preamble, is to provide for the implementation of the constitutional right to information held by any public institution, and to foster a culture of transparency and accountability in public affairs. Properly applied, it should enhance the quality of governance in our country and provide a critical tool in the fight against corruption in public life. The Parliament has quite rightly provided that the Act should come into effect in the next financial year, i.e. January 2020, because there are financial consequences in the implementation of the law, in order to give the public treasury the opportunity to make the necessary allocations to enable the Act to be effective. I'm very happy that this law has finally been passed, and I did make the commitment that when it was brought to me, I would give my assent to it right away. It was in fact brought to me yesterday afternoon. But on second thought, I felt that I should sign it in the plain view of the Ghanaian people, for you to know that this long, winding parliamentary process has finally come to an end. Long live Ghanaian democracy. May God bless our nation and make her great and strong. I thank you for your attention.
Let's get on the phone now and speak with Presidential Affairs Correspondent Elton Bobe. Hello, Elton. What more has the President been saying, apart from assenting to the bill today?
Well, Kamala, I mean, the most important thing according to him is that the bill is now a law that is awaiting for implementation in January 2020. Remember, Parliament passed it in March, and now when the President assenting to it, what is left is for full implementation. Now, they'll be giving themselves from now to January 2020 for full implementation of the law because there are financial implications to it. My information is that it may cost Ghana over $700 million cedis to have it fully implemented for the next 5 years. So there's going to be a substantial amount, according to the President, in the 2020 budget for work to start on it, for a formal secretariat to be set up, so people who seek information from the public can formally write to it and then get the information that they want. For him, the fight against corruption and ensuring transparency in the public space will be very much deepened with the implementation of the right to information law. So it was a 5-minute program, not much was said, but if you look at the journey that the law has traveled, then the significance of it came to bear when the President finally assented to it at the Jubilee House in his office on the 4th floor.
Well, Elton, we also know that the President has been touring some flood-prone areas here in Accra, especially Circle. Can you bring us some updates on that particular tour as well?
Yes, we are now at Circle, the Odo River to be precise, where some dredging work is ongoing here. Now, this is where the President is starting the tour of Accra. He's actually visiting flood-prone areas. He is here to inspect the dredging work on the Odo River, and then interact with the contractors, and then formally speak to the people here. The information is that he wants to ensure that work progress fast because we are now in the rainy season. Recent, reports about people dying from the rain, something that he doesn't want to accept any longer. That's the more reason why he wants to touch base with the contractors, speak to them, get firm assurance that work is progressing and progressing steadily.
You heard there my colleague Elton Bobe. He is the Presidential Affairs Correspondent with the President on that tour of some flood-prone areas here in Accra, starting specifically from the Kwame Nkrumah Circle area. Well, let's still stay on press freedom and information-related stories because the Freedom Media Vanguard has given a one-week ultimatum for government to open all radio stations that have been shut down in the last couple of weeks by the National Communications Authority. The group this morning marched from Elwak to the NCA office in what they call the March for Freedom Expression or Free Expression. The group is accusing government of using the NCA to suppress the media. Here is Samuguchi Ablakwa MP for North Tone, who joined the demonstrators earlier today.
We decided as a minority to join this free expression walk because free expression is a fundamental human right. Chapter 5 of our Constitution is very, very clear. It is an inalienable right. It's a God-given right. And so we do not see the attack on Radio Gold and Radio XYZ as just an attack on those two stations. We do not see the attacks on Manasseh Azuri Awuni as just an attack on a single journalist. We do not see the assassination of Ahmed Hussein Swali as just a journalist who has been killed. It is an attack on a right that we all share, a fundamental human right that we must all safeguard, that we must all protect. That is why we are joining this demonstration to make a strong point that we will not accept that creeping tyranny. We will not accept fascism. We will not accept dictatorship. If you look at all the facts surrounding how government has operated, go and read the decision of the Electronic Communication Tribunal. The NCA lost. People are saying that the NCA is implementing laws. What laws? The NCA is implementing a tribunal decision. They should quote a paragraph. We challenge them to quote a paragraph in the tribunal's decision that asks them to go and shut down Radio Gold and Radio XYZ. The 18 June 2018 decision. They should reference any paragraph. We will not accept. Look, this is a country that has always fought dictators. We have always fought tyrants, and we ensure that the people's rights, the people's fundamental human rights are respected. And we are going to continue to join such protest movements. We are going to continue to resist oppressors' rule, and we are going to ensure that our inalienable right, our fundamental human right of free expression, the First Amendment in the United States of America, is respected.
Not all MP Samuel Okujeto Ablakwade. We can get onto the phone now and speak to my colleague Nancy Emefadradosi, who was with the protesters earlier today. Hello, Nancy. Tell us more about this petition. Beyond calling for the reopening of these stations, what more are the demonstrators seeking?
Well, so I spoke to the convener of this group, Prince Minka. He tells me that the NTA earlier noted that both Radio Gold and XYZ had failed to renew their license. But he tells me they have had several engagements, but then the NTA had failed to honor their part of the deal, which is to ensure that they are able to register or have their license restored back to them. And so they are still giving government and the NTA just a week ultimatum to open the station back, because for some of them that I spoke to, the staff of these radio stations, they tell me that life has been unbearable already for them. They are unable to take care of their families and all of that. And so basically their concern is that they want the radio stations open, and they also want government to take its hands off the NCA because they think that the government is using the NCA to suppress the media.
Nancy, were they successful in submitting that petition to the NCA, and any word from officials who received this petition?
Well, yes. After the march from the LWAC to the NCA around airport, they finally met the deputy director for NCA, which is Madam Olivia Korte. All she could say was that thank you, and that we're going to go back and then relook at the petition that has been presented to them, and that is all that she said.
Many thanks to you, Nancy Emefadradosi, my colleague, who joined the protesters earlier today. Well, still to come, a coalition of aggrieved customers of Gold Coast Fund Management petitioning Yoko to investigate owners of a company for allegedly transferring monies from investors to Liberia and the United States for concealment.
The question we are asking is that if it is not for concealment, how come all of a sudden, when we find ourselves in this situation, we do not have a property of Dr. Indum to attach any longer?
This is still Joy News. Today we are going for a quick break. Return with more news. You're welcome back. Now, a local coach and football administrator, Nana Ajiman, has blamed Asamoah Gyan's decision to retire from the Black Stars on the unprofessional manner the national team is run. Nana Ajiman believes that so long as players like Asamoah Gyan are allowed to finance the national team, they will naturally assume ownership of the captaincy of the club. He has thus urged administrators of the club to be professional.
There's never been any unity. There was unity in 2006 when I was in Germany with the team when we first played the World Cup. There was unity there. Some small niggling problems, but there was unity. After that, 2008, Can 2008, there's never been any unity. There's always been a lot of conflict. There's been a lot of issues, and no one wants to deal with it. Everyone wants to tell the public that the rumors they're hearing are not true. So this is not going to affect any unity, because you can't affect a non-existent unity. It's not there. There are two factions in the Black Stars. One is the Jan faction, the other is the Ayu faction. Today, the Ayu faction are celebrating. There's no two ways about it. And the Jan faction, some of them are considering saying that they're not available if they are called to play in the national team. You better believe it. Now, another issue is that, look, we've never run the Black Stars properly. And technically, that we've never done it properly either. Because Jan can come out and say quite clearly it's about the captain's armband, because he's been made to believe that that's personal property. Because we've not run things professionally. So it's been seen as, oh, this belongs to you, Asamoah. Just as a place in the starting lineup belongs to Jan whether he's performing or not. Why? Because we don't have a strict comprehension.
You hear the football coach, veteran sports journalist and football administrator Nanajiman sharing his perspectives on Asamoah Gyan's resignation or retirement from the Black Stars. Well, sports journalist Fifi Anaman also chastised Asamoah Gyan for the manner in which he communicated his resignation. Mr. Anaman believes for a player of Gyan's stature, he could have communicated this decision some better.
This is a leader who has come out on the eve of the announcement of a squad for a major tournament to tell us that, you know what, I am retiring, and not only am I retiring, but I'm retiring because they said they won't make me captain, and I am captain, and I want to be captain. I mean, even if he had genuine consent, and I've seen a lot of theories going about that maybe he was treated unfairly and all that, that's all granted. But the way you communicate, I mean, this morning I saw a headline, one of our major newspapers saying that Asamoah Gyan retires over captaincy role. Is this how he wants to bow out after 16 years, 106 caps, 51 goals? He wants to retire because he wasn't made captain. If I was Asamoah Gyan, I know there's a lot of hurt. You know, I know there's a lot of misunderstanding. But the more in which you communicate, you could have come out to say personal reasons. You leave it at that, you sort out the issues, let Ghana go to the AFCON, let us come back and let's discuss the issues. But you don't create a scene as a leader. You know, and you talk about some of these things and people think you are in the camp of Andrea Yu or Thomas Partey or whoever it is that people are speculating should be the next captain.
This is still Joy News today with me, Komla Adom. Let's do some more stories. Now, the Supreme Court has set June 19 to deliver its judgment in a case challenging the powers of the Attorney General to discontinue a case. Gregory Afoko, one of the suspects in the murder of the Upper East Regional Chair of the New Patriotic Party, Adams Mahama, wants the court to set aside the AG's decision to terminate the trial. Mr. Afoko's trial started in 2016 and was nearing completion after the prosecution and the defense had closed their cases. The AG on January 28 filed a nolle prosequi to discontinue the trial following the arrest of another suspect, Asake Alangbi, who had been on the run since the incident occurred. Now, state prosecutors and lawyers for Mr. Afoko on Tuesday informed the court they had jointly filed the main issues they believe should be determined by the courts. Now, presiding judge Julius Ansa announced the court's decision will be ready on June 19. We have business right up, and Daryl Kwa will join us with details of business news in which the coalition of aggrieved customers of Gold Coast Fund Management are petitioning Iyoko to investigate owners of a company for allegedly transferring customer investment to Liberia and the United States for concealment.